This is the Hype Squad with Charli McConnell, a podcast where women can be full of themselves and brag about what they're good at. Each week, we're going to bring you conversations covering topics like motherhood, life, relationships, business, and everything in between, because anything is possible with your very own Hype Squad. What's up, ladies? Welcome back to the Hype Squad. I'm Charli McConnell, your host. Today we have Olivia Smith. Olivia is a young professional originally from Birmingham, living in Auburn, Alabama. She graduated in 2021 from Auburn University with a degree in marketing and has since pursued a career in sales operations. She recently got engaged to her best friend, Braden, who she met through her sister and brother-in-law. And in her free time, she enjoys running, spending quality time with people she loves, traveling the world. She wants to grow her community with women that will empower each other and lead inspiring lives. Welcome, Olivia.
What's up?
I'm so excited.
I know.
Okay, so one of the things you and I talked before we started recording, but one of the things I really wanted to dive into, you're 26 or about to be 26?
About to be 26, yeah.
So I think that the age, because we had Jasmine on a couple of weeks ago talking about like she's fresh out of college.
Mhm.
And you've been out of college for a while now, and
Yeah.
you've been in the same job, building your career, climbing the ladder,
Yep.
and you're on the other side of that. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to hear, I thought this would be a great conversation where you could share like how difficult that was and how you moved
Mhm.
through it and how you got to where you are, because I feel like people need to hear the success story.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So when I graduated in 2021, finding a job was really hard. And like I was a marketing major, like kind of should be easy to find a job. Because every business needs marketing. But I graduated right after COVID. So people were not hiring. And so I had a few options. I had an option in Nashville, one in Birmingham, and then came across an opportunity here. Um, and just decided that Auburn was the place I wanted to stay. It was comfortable. I loved Auburn. I loved the community. Even outside of the university, like it's a great city. So I got into the job, and honestly, like it was weird. It was really lonely at first because, like, you graduate college and everybody leaves and all your friends leave. And none of my friends stayed here. I had actually, one of my best friends, she stayed here and she was in grad school. And even we didn't live together at the time. She moved in with me a year after my graduation. So that was really fun. But the first year out of college was like really hard. It was like very lonely. I was used to like going every day. We had social events 4 times a week, like was out with my friends. We went to dinner all the time. We watched The Bachelorette all the time together, like constantly with people. And it went from that every day for 4 years to I'm living with 2 other roommates who have full-time jobs. We may see each other, maybe not.
Mhm.
So it was just really weird. It was a hard transition. And I kind of equate it to like moving into college my freshman year. Like, although I knew a ton of people coming to college, it is a hard transition that first semester of like, all right, like you don't live with your parents anymore and you get to do whatever you want. Like you have the freedom to do whatever you want. And like I think first semester for a lot of people is really lonely in college because like you meet a ton of people, but none of them are your best friends because you haven't known them.
Mhm.
So that first year out of college was really hard. And I think it was one of those things where I had to force myself to be uncomfortable and like go meet people, whether it was like join a small group at church or go play tennis and join a tennis club. Um, and I think that got me one active, but just got me out in the community to where like I met adults and like I
Mhm.
wasn't meeting 19, 20, 21-year-olds who are in college having fun all day. Like
Yeah.
I could relate with people that were a little bit older.
Mm. I love that. I think it doesn't matter what age you are. It's hard to make friends, like new
Mhm.
friends. It's
Yeah.
hard to put yourself out there. And again, it doesn't matter how old you are, right?
Yeah.
Like, Sailor 7, and she's like, I want to meet a new friend. Like,
Yeah.
it's always something that people yearn for. And I joke a lot because it's like dating for friends.
Yep.
And what gets even harder is when you're like trying to find couple friends as a couple. Like, that's a whole nother shit show of its own.
Oh yeah.
But I love that you said that. Onikia, I don't know if she'll have aired at this point, but Onikia Brown, who owns the Bar Method, was on a
Yeah.
couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about like workout classes like that specifically, like go out and meet women, like you have something in common with them, tennis, small group. Did you join like the young professionals group?
No, we actually talked about that this morning in the office. I want to so bad. I thought about it and I've looked into it multiple times.
That's another
It's
good
just something I need to
one.
commit to. Yeah.
Because you're right. Like your friends from college, like and there's that weird cusp of time where sometimes
Yes.
they haven't graduated at the same
Yeah.
time you did. So they're still in that season.
Yep.
And then and I hear it from Jasmine. She's like, I'm tired. I
Yeah.
can't go on a Tuesday. I have to go to work tomorrow. Like
Yeah.
all my friends are going out and I'm just like, I can't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's
It
hard.
is. It's very hard.
So tell me what it was like. Let's go into the work aspect a little
Yep.
bit. Because when you started your job,
Yep.
there weren't a lot of women in the
No.
business and you were younger than most people you were working
Mhm.
with. Tell me what that was like because I feel like that's a huge thing that people can relate to, especially coming right out of college. Is it's
Yeah.
like you're trying to, I don't know, like I don't know, stick out your
Find your
feathers
group.
type of thing,
Yeah.
like make sure people respect
Be
you or like
comfortable.
what
Yeah.
was that like for you?
So I work for a professional tool company, which very male dominated industry. And it was so intimidating going into that office because like obviously like I know what a screwdriver and a hammer are. But like their industry, like the automotive industry and the aviation world, like I didn't know anything about that. And here I am, like cute little college girl coming out of sorority life. And I'm like, let's go work with tools. So I went into the office. I think I was the fourth female in the office. Like there was
Mm,
three before me. And like you said, I was a lot younger than a lot of the people. Very intimidating, especially when I got thrown into a role, kind of like a customer service role, which I was fine with. But then one of the sales guys quit within the first 2 weeks that I was there. So I kind of took over his sales responsibilities, which I was not expecting at all. And I had no idea what their expectations of me were because I didn't know the product yet.
sure.
So it's super intimidating, but I think it's one of those things where like I dove right in and my previous boss, he was great in like taking me under his wing and like showing me the ropes. He would give me responsibility and he would let me fail.
Mhm.
And I think that was probably one of the best things that he could do is letting me fail because then I can learn. And then I
Mhm.
learn to grow. I learn how to do something correctly. And then I can take that and lead with it.
Mhm.
And so fast forward a year and a half, I kind of got pulled up pretty quickly. I would say within the first 6 to 9 months, I think I was moved up. And then fast forward a year and a half later, my boss actually left the company. My old boss left the company, and I was thrust into a position that he was in, basically, and leading a team of three guys beneath me, which was also intimidating and like kind of weird for me because like they were close to my age.
Mm.
And I will always say this, it is so hard leading people your own age, and especially they were all male.
Mhm.
And so I felt like the underdog in that situation. Um, and it was weird because like even when like older males would come in, I'd have no problem like teaching them, helping them learn, and holding them accountable. But when it came to my team, it was just weird. It was hard. And I don't know
Mm.
why it made me so uncomfortable. But that helped me grow because like I
Yeah.
had multiple conversations with my current leader and he was basically like, you just have to be okay with being uncomfortable. Like, it's going to
Yeah.
be weird, but since you're a leader in this company, like, you have to step up and you have to own it. And so I've really worked on that. And I will say the most growth that I've ever had in my life is with this job, like professionally, mentally, personally. Like, I have grown so much. And I think you could ask anyone at my work. Like the difference of me coming out of college being 22 and like the difference of me being almost 26 now and like in a
Sure.
leadership role, like the growth is insane.
I think that chapter of your life, regardless, is a huge
Hmm.
chapter of growth, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
But I love that you hit on like, the manager that would let you fail because that is
Hmm.
huge to
Yeah.
be able to mess up and figure like
Hmm.
someone not save you,
Right.
right? But also to learn how not it's not so much to not be intimidated, but to be able to
Right.
stay in the room when you're intimidated and not run away.
Yes.
I'm interested though, like your team, you said they were
Hmm.
your age. Do you think it was just an age thing that made you feel uncomfortable, or do you think it's because they were your team and you were directly responsible for them?
Yeah. I think it probably could be a little bit of both. Because there were guys that worked with me that were a little bit older than me, and like I had no problem being like, "Hey, I need a 2-week notice for your vacation. You can't just turn this in to me today." Um, or like, "Hey, I know you did that. Let's go about that a different way." Whereas like with this team, and I think part of it too is just like we have different personalities. Um, I can come across very strong, and very, I call it my passion. It can come across as aggressive sometimes. But I just have a lot of passion for what I do.
I love it.
And so, and like, there's personalities that like don't take that well, or
Yeah.
they don't respond to that
For
type of
sure.
personality super well. And so I think it was like me having to adjust my leadership style and like the way I communicated with them based on each person, like who it was. Like one of my guys loves for me to be super blunt, super upfront, and like just straight up with everything. And the other one, I feel like I kind of have to like be really calm and collected with him, so I don't hurt any feelings. So yeah, and I think, I don't know. I think if I had a team, and it could be too, like if I had a team of girls, I feel like I could rock it and like just run with it and be like so ingrained with them. But I think for whatever reason, my team doesn't intimidate me. I think it's just like typically in a male world, they would be under a male leader,
Yeah.
and they're not. And they're also under a younger leader. And so I think it was also just me learning to be comfortable with that, number one, but also learning to be comfortable with like telling people no, like that's unacceptable, and really like just putting my foot down. And it's weird because like I don't have a problem with that like in relationships, but for whatever reason maybe at work where it's like I don't want to hurt their feelings because I'm
Yeah.
with them every day and I see them every day. I think I struggle with that for sure.
It's like a people pleasing quality, but it's interesting because I feel like everyone has had the experience of working for someone.
Yeah.
It's a really different place to be leading other people or leading a team, even if you
Yeah.
just have one person under you, right?
Right.
But I have experience with the leading a team of guys, of males specifically. And I think that even if it was a team of women, from my perspective, it would still be challenging in a completely different way.
Yeah.
But I do think that it reminds me of like people who have multiple children. You don't parent them all exactly the same because they need different things. And I feel like that's such a great life skill.
Yeah.
Because I think so many of us get so ingrained in like, this is who I want to be. And I don't care who you are, you're going to see this side of me. And the truth of the matter is, you're not going to get anything accomplished like that. Like
No.
it's a very specific interpersonal relationship type of skill where it's like you have to understand the people that you're not just leading but working with, right? And figure out how to work with them and not, and that's why like leaders who are super aggressive and don't meet their employees where they
Yeah.
are not great leaders.
Yeah.
Right. But it's hard to do that. Um, I think too, like, tell me what it was like just with coworkers, like dealing with, because this is another thing too, like when you're in college, you're used to class, which you're not like competing with anybody
Right.
necessarily, and your girlfriends, your roommates, whatever. If drama happens, you can walk away or you can explode,
Yeah.
whatever. But there's always going to be some sort of tension or drama in a workplace, especially with a lot of people, male or female. So, what were some things that you learned, like how to handle as far as that was concerned?
So my current leader, he has a lot of great sayings that I think I've taken into like even my personal life. And one of them is respond and don't react.
Mm,
And I think when I was first in the role and really young, I think I would react.
yeah,
Like I would get frustrated. I would
very ego
probably
driven.
throw attitude into my response to people. Um, and like even like I'd get off the phone with customers and be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so annoying." Like I get frustrated so easily. Which is really funny because like it's really hard for me to get super frustrated these days. Like I just don't.
Hit your stride.
Yeah. But I learned how to respond and not react.
Yeah.
And I would listen. And most of the time I would just like I would walk away or like go to the bathroom and just like take a break. And there's been a few situations at work where like I have cried because I was so frustrated, or I've cried because I felt attacked by somebody. Um, it's been like twice. But in those situations, it is so easy to like have your moment of emotion and then just like put it away and don't talk about it with that person and just ignore it because you're coworkers and you just want everything to be fine. Um, but you've got to have those hard conversations. And like when you are frustrated with a coworker, especially someone that you share an office with or someone that you work with often, you've got to have the hard conversation so that you don't have this thing lingering in the back of your head. Because it's not just me that would have it, it's both of us that would have that. And so learning how to have hard conversations is so important. And I've had to do that a ton.
Yeah.
Especially like with my team. Like there's times where I have to be like, hey guys, clock starts at 8 a.m. Like we can't be here at 8:15. Like you need to get here at 8. But also just like personal attacks have happened, and having those conversations is really tough just because it's so uncomfortable and you don't want to step on toes, but you also want to stand up for yourself.
Yes.
And especially with me being a female in a male dominated industry, I have to stand up for myself like often. And I'm a person of respect. Like respect is huge for me. And so if I feel disrespected, especially now, I will have a conversation, and I don't mind now because I've had so many uncomfortable ones that it gets easier. So
I think, you're talking about not talking about it and how you carry that tension. It's very passive aggressive, where it creates like a rot in the work environment, which will then like turn into a much bigger thing. And I think about when Michelle and I had Tech Etch, we used to joke all the time that our marriage to each other, because being in business with somebody is like being married to them, but also working in close quarters with some is the same, right? Like it is a relationship you have to nurture. And I remember we would joke at the time, like our marriage to each other was so much healthier than our marriage to our husbands at the time, because first of all, we were spending almost every waking moment with each other, and we would have conflict. Like we would have serious conflict, and one or both of us would want to run away from it and ignore it. And then the other one, not always the same person, would call the other to the carpet, like, okay, take a lap, like go for a walk, come back, cool off. We're going to talk about it. And we had no choice, because if we didn't figure our shit out, like our business would have crumbled. And so we were forced into it. And I think, again, another great life skill is to be able to say, and also to stand up for yourself in a respectful way, right? Like not the reacting, but the responding. Because it's not about you. Like whatever their drama is, like everyone's coming to work with their own shit, right? Their own shit at home that you know nothing about, and they're carrying all this stress, and they're coming to work, and sometimes it's exploding at work, right? And it never has anything to do with you. Like even if it's a work specific thing, it's not about you.
The reaction is stemming from something else.
It's them, right? And you can say that too from yourself when you were reacting. It wasn't about the customer on the phone or the coworker. It was something else that we were struggling with. I want to talk about crying in the workplace. And because you said crying when I'm frustrated, Olivia, I cry at every heightened emotion that I have, like happy, sad, hungry, sleepy, like all of the things, right? Frustrated, overwhelmed. Crying is my release, and I can't even help it. And that was one thing I used to struggle with so much, was I don't want anyone to see me cry. And I think I understand the sentiment. Like there is a time and a place for sure, but that's really hard not to do. Like what was your experience with that?
So the first time it happened, I was in a meeting with a few other people and my old boss, and he could tell. Luckily, he stood up for me at the end, because he could tell like I was just getting punched basically, and I couldn't do anything about it. And it was honestly a total misunderstanding of the situation of what happened. But I just had to sit there and take it, because at that point, I'm not going to defend myself to someone who's going to continue to just beat me down. In their mind, not grasp the situation.
Right.
So at that time, I went back into my office and shut both doors and was like fuming. And I think I had a tear run down, and then my boss enters, and I just like,
oh yeah, that's
flooded.
And floodgate.
No,
open.
I was just like, I can't control myself now. But honestly, it was like he was like an older brother to me that day. Like he was very protective of me, stood up for me, and knew that like what situation was being described was not really the situation. And he was like, dude, just don't, like, you're good. Like, do not worry about it. Like, we'll have a conversation about that later with him. And like, it's also just like other people as well as myself needed to grow in certain areas. And I think that was a moment where I was like, all right, I have to grow in sticking up for myself, number one.
Yeah.
But I also just have to learn, like, sometimes people they're not going to see the full picture of the situation. And that is why they're reacting a certain way. And I just can't take it personal.
Again, it's not about
Not
you,
take it personal.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
And you could die trying to explain your
Yes.
side of the story, but it doesn't really matter,
Right.
right? Like the ship is too far gone.
Yeah.
But did you feel better after you cried?
Oh yeah, 100%.
So I think that's the key point that like I think some of us like try to push off crying for so long
Yeah.
because we think it makes us weak. But in reality, for me anyway, and what I'm hearing from you is like cry, go to
Yes.
your safe place and
Get
cry.
it
Go to your
out.
car, go for a walk, whatever, get frustrated, go for your bitch walk, like
Yeah.
whatever it is, and come back in. Like
Yeah.
release it because the more you hold that shit in, it festers. Again,
Yeah.
a rot festers the entire day. You're going to be passive aggressive all
Yep.
day or upset or quiet or whatever. And we had that like that wall at Tech Etch. Do you remember that it said like hit me and we had the
Yes.
baseball bat? So I did this. So at Tech Etch, and you know, we were etching tools. It was something very monotonous and repetitive, but attention to detail was really important. And if you messed up, it was infuriating, like infuriating, because you will have done like the same thing 20 other times, and this one it messes up, and it's just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And I always tell people, like, most of us have like an anger love language, so to speak, or like an anger language. Mine is throwing and hitting stuff. and I'm not ashamed of that, right? And so we had these walls that were like old display stands that we used for jig organization. And we had an extra one. And I'm like, I'm gonna hit the
This is
shit
what we're
out of
gonna
this
use.
wall. And so we got a baseball bat and I wrote in Sharpie real big, hit me. And before I knew it, like people from the entire like whatever you call that, like that tech park or whatever it is, started coming down to hit our wall.
Oh, that is so
when
funny.
they would get frustrated because it was cathartic. But I think even if your thing's not crying, like you have to be able to move that shit through your body,
that emotion,
to be able to come back and be productive. And you're right, like there's always a lesson in it. Things are happening for you to learn something about yourself, not to you because the universe hates you type of thing.
Yeah.
But also it's really hard for somebody to hold a mirror up to you and like show you the places that you need to grow.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, holding a mirror up to yourself is really hard. And that's something that like my company is very passionate about, is like accountability, which is great.
Yeah.
Like I think I have become more accountable since working there, and I think it's a lot easier to hold people accountable. But holding that mirror up to yourself can be really hard. You can find every reason wrong in everybody else and the way that they respond and react to issues and situations. But the second that you have to do it to yourself, it's like, oh, I need to take a step back. Like, I need to look at myself before I look at anyone else because I have things I need to work on. And honestly, that's been kind of relieving because it's like,
it's hard.
Well, and the thing is too, is like I try to keep personal life outside of office doors. Like I always say, the second I walk in that door, everything at home and what's going on in my personal life, I leave. And I really try my best to keep, if it's strong emotion, I try to keep that out. Because like you say, it does affect the rest of the office. It affects the environment. It affects the culture. And if I'm walking around with a bad attitude because of something that happened at home and I'm bringing that into the office, negativity is very contagious, but so is positivity.
Yeah.
So I want to foster an environment that's like very positive and uplifting and encouraging. And when you don't, it's so toxic, and you do not want to create a toxic work environment.
It also feels like shit though to like spread your negativity Because, and I'm sure anyone listening and you and I can both think of a time
Yeah.
where like we were in a piss poor mood. Somebody
Mhm.
came in, was bubbly, pissed us off a little bit more, but then eventually it like bled into us and we were
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna gravitate towards that or whatever. But the same thing is true in the opposite. And it's so exhausting to
Yeah.
be pissed off.
It is. It like takes more energy to be upset than it does to be happy.
So yeah. And I feel like you're not as productive, you're not as fulfilled.
No.
Right. And it makes it to where you don't enjoy your job,
Yeah.
which is a huge deal.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so talking about working in the work environment, I'm trying to think okay, so friendships after college. This is another thing I want to talk about
Yeah.
because I've experienced it. I feel like there are so many seasons in friendships that it takes a while for us to be able to like zoom out and be like, okay, this season's over, or at
Yeah.
least changing
Yep.
drastically. What was that like for you? You said earlier, people moved away and
Mhm.
then you had to find new friends. But
Yeah.
even in that period of time, like new friends that you found, struggling with like your old best friends and that
Mhm.
relationship shifting. What
Yeah.
was that? What was that like?
So, like I said earlier, like after college, everyone moves away. You're lonely, like, and it's not as easy to find friends. Like in college, you're thrown into, I was a sorority girl. So I was thrown into a sorority of like 500 girls, immediately had friends, and you're going to all these events together and like meeting new people together. And at that point in life, everybody wants friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so easy to make friends. Well, out of college, you move into this transition where like, you still have your friends, you want to keep up, you want to stay in touch, but then you also want to meet new friends because they're not in the same town anymore. Um, and I will say I am the worst, the world's worst caller until it comes to
Same.
Braden, which is really funny. Um, I'm the world's worst caller. Like even calling my family, my sister, like I do not pick up the phone.
Same.
And so I learned I was like, all right, if my friend, like, if we're, and I'm also not a great texter, which is also terrible if I'm not a good caller. But I just realized that like me and my friends are not great texters with each other. And so, because life gets busy, like you have a full-time job, you have the workouts you want to go to, you have new friends that you're hanging out with. So I just learned I had to pick up the phone. I absolutely had to pick up the phone. And if it was a 10-minute call, great. Or if it was a 2-minute call or 2-hour call, like amazing. Um, but it was like literally intentionally finding time to keep up with your old friends. And I also learned though that like if they're not returning that effort to you,
Mm,
why am I putting in so much effort? What is the reasoning behind my effort? Because I'm huge. Like I want to feel just as loved as I'm making somebody else feel loved.
yeah.
And so there were some friendships that like they're distant now. And it's it was hard at first, but I think as life goes on and you meet new people that are also so intentional and like want to hear how you're doing and want to keep up with you, it's a little refreshing.
Mm,
So I had some friendships that kind of are distant. I still like we'll keep in touch every once in a while, but it's not as often as we did in college, obviously. But I also had friends that moved to like Delaware and Arkansas and like really far. I'm actually going to see my friend that lived in Delaware or lives in Delaware next month. So I'm really excited about that. But like it's a plane ride away now. It's not Atlanta or Birmingham where I can drive for the weekend to hang out. So those relationships they're still great. But it is harder to keep in touch and like you really do have to be intentional because your life gets so busy. Um,
Girl, just wait. I mean, it only gets worse, right?
yeah,
Like once you, and it's not even getting married, but like working full time, getting married if you do, having kids if you do. Like
yep,
it's like I only have so much extra time, and I would much
yeah,
rather be like vegging Netflix or like scrolling on my phone. And you do
hmm,
forget, and you have to put a lot of intention into it.
yeah,
It makes me think of one of my clients. She would talk about her best friend from childhood and she would
hmm,
refer to her as her best friend. But there
hmm,
was all of this like tension because the other friend was not putting as much effort into it as she
hmm,
was. And so she would keep making these comments. And I'm like, why do you keep calling her your best friend? And she said, well, because she's always been my best friend. I'm like, okay, I
yeah,
get that. But I think that because you keep calling her that, your expectations for how much effort she's putting into this friendship, it feels heavier.
Yeah.
And it's more hurtful that she's not putting it into it. I understand the thought process, but like let's quit using that term. Doesn't mean she stops being your best
Right.
friend, but let's stop telling ourselves that she needs to be at this level of friendship
Right.
and then hurt that she's not. And back up from that, right? Because and they're in very different seasons of their life, which is
Yeah.
like it's totally understandable because that happens, but it's you may have been best friends in high school or middle school or childhood or whatever, and that's wonderful. And you'll always have those memories, and you can still think in they're one of my best friends.
Yeah.
But the relationship is going to change. I think of
100%.
I say my three best girlfriends from high school, and I always say it like that because that's the chapter that they're from. We are still best friends. We talk we have a thread that but it's like it shifts. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we text every day. Sometimes we just send funny memes to each other on social media.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen each other in maybe a year,
Yeah.
right? But I know I can go to them and it just has changed. We all
Right.
live in different cities.
Right.
It is harder. It's really hard to get all four of us together. We all are married and have kids. But I think that's again really, really relatable. And I, thinking about having kids and being married and your friends being in different seasons too, there is a level of I don't want to say jealousy because
Right.
I don't think it's that simple, but it is like you want different things. Like you're in
Disconnect
different
almost.
seasons. Like and once you get in a relationship, your single friends,
Yeah.
it gets weird.
It is weird.
And if you're single and your other friends start getting married, again, weird.
It is very weird.
It's so hard.
Well, and like I was always the girl with a boyfriend. Had a long-term boyfriend throughout college. We broke up middle of my junior year. And so junior year to the end of my senior year, like I was single and we had so much fun. We pretty much were all single at that point. And it was so fun because it was like girls' night every night. So that was great. But after college, I've been in a relationship and I have two other friends. Both are now married. But all of my other friends are single and like not even dating yet. And that's okay, totally fine.
Sure.
Like if they're not the right person, don't date them. I get it. But it is weird because it's like they can't understand the season that I'm in right now because they haven't been there yet. And so yeah, I would say it's that can be a struggle too of like you want to talk about all the wedding planning and like everything you've done. And it's like my best friend, I have never even seen her with a boyfriend. Like she's never had a boyfriend as long as we've known each other. And so it's so funny, like talking to her about all this because she's like, that's down the road for me. But she's so supportive of it.
Yeah.
And like she just gets really excited about it. So that's fun. But yeah, it's hard being in different seasons of life
Yeah.
with your friends, especially if you're in different cities.
Oh, 100%.
Because then it's like double disconnect here. Like you're 6 hours away and we're in totally different stages of life. Rather if we were in the same city in different seasons of life, we'd at least like get to see each other often. So
Yeah. I think too, I that word jealousy is definitely not the right word. The word I'm thinking of now is more like pressure.
yeah.
Because and from both sides, right? Because the friend that's in a relationship or getting married feels pressure that she's not spending more time with her single friend or she's let her down or she's hanging out with these other married couples and that makes it weird. And then the single friend will feel pressure because it's like, why am I not there yet? Like, am I doing
I need to
something
be in a
wrong?
relationship.
Or everyone keeps setting her up with people, right? Like, hurry up and get to our chapter.
Yeah.
Like feeling rushed
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And I think, yeah, definitely location would make it a lot easier. But even then, like it's
still
still
hard.
different.
Yeah.
Right. And depending on who you're in a relationship with, your counterpart, as long as they're super comfortable with themselves and not intimidated by you hanging out with single women, like that could also be a tension point as well.
And like recently, I had a roommate up until the beginning of August of this year. And so like and she was legit, she still is, she's my best friend. She's my maid of honor in my wedding. Like I felt like I didn't want to leave her because I was like, I don't want to leave her by herself. Like she's not dating anybody. And luckily she had a lot of friends here. She was great. She's friends with everybody. So that was good. But like, I just felt like guilty of leaving her by herself to go spend time with my boyfriend and fiance now. Like,
Mhm.
it's like one of those things where it's like, what do I do? Like,
Yeah.
I want to spend time with her and I love her. I also want to spend time with Brayden because we're long distance. So I see my roommate
Yeah.
7 days a week right
Yeah.
now. So that was a weird like thing that I had to get over.
Mhm.
And I think it also that just stems from college. Like in college, like you spend all your time with your roommates.
Yeah.
So when you get out of college, it's like, oh, I have other adult things I need to be doing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it was a weird transition of like now I'm living by myself for the first time ever, which is also so weird. But I feel like I'm finally an adult. But I don't feel guilty leaving every weekend to go see my fiance. He's a football coach, and so they have games every weekend, and I love football. Luckily, I always tell him I'm like, it's good that
That
you're
is
marrying a
good.
girl that loves football.
That is really good.
But I don't feel guilty leaving anymore because I'm not
Yeah.
leaving anybody by themselves. So
Well, and you have to be selfish, like, and
Mhm.
to a certain degree, right? Because it's, you can't be everything for everybody.
Mhm.
And I remember when Colby and I first started dating, my friendships, one in particular, suffered a lot. And I think it's because she and I were single and spent
Yep.
every waking moment. We didn't live together, but we spent every waking
Yep.
moment with each other. And he was a distraction
Mhm.
from her, and she felt that and was very verbal about that,
Mhm.
and it created tension. He did not live in the same town as me.
Yeah.
So there was that, closer than what Braden is, but still. And she was not supportive.
Yeah.
And that was really, really hard for me because it was like, but I'm still giving you time, right? I don't
Right.
have as much time to give you. And so
Right.
that was a really hard season to let go of that friendship, and knowing that I wasn't choosing Colby over her,
Right.
but she put me in such a terrible situation,
Mhm.
like where I had to make a decision because I couldn't, like, anyway,
Right.
that was difficult. And I think too, like, there's always going to be something that's going to be
Yes.
there. Like either you haven't talked to them for months or weeks or whatever it is,
Mhm.
but being able to come back to your friendships and put intention into them,
Yeah.
because it's not just you that's busy, it's them that's busy,
Mhm.
right? And it's like a constant loop.
Yeah.
Constant
And you
loop.
just pick up right where you left off. Like, and that's where I know in the friendships that I can pick up right where we left off and like go 2 months without talking, like
Mhm.
that's when I know it's a real friendship.
Those are special.
And if it's the ones that like it's weird when you talk again, it's like, okay, maybe we have grown apart and maybe these seasons of life are just like over at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I think too, Rachel and I did an episode where we talked about this, but it's like seeing your friendship for what it is and like what place they hold in your life and not making it anything else than what it is.
yes.
Like, so you have your party friends and you
Yep.
have your chill friends, you have your old school nostalgic friends. Like, there's
Yeah.
so many work friends, right? It's very rare that you have friends that meet all of those things for you,
Yep.
right? And those are very special. But also the other ones are very special too.
Mhm.
They serve their purpose, but knowing like what role do they
Right.
fit in my
Where do
life,
they
type of
fit?
thing.
Yeah.
So the waiting period of season, like waiting in between seasons. So
Mhm.
you put that as one of the talking points. So
Yeah.
I want to hear from you. What does that mean for you? What were you thinking about when you wrote that?
So I think a few different things. Originally it was the waiting season of like dating and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my sister got married right out of college to her best friend, and it was sweet. It was a beautiful wedding. And like, I think I always dreamed of like, I was gonna be married at 22.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm almost 26, and I always thought I'd be on my second kid by now. Like, cruising through life, perfect little family, whatever. Um, Thank you, Jesus, that that is not where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because that would have been a totally different life. But the waiting season's really hard. And I
Mm-hmm.
think because I'm such a family person, like I want to be married, I want to have kids, as well as like a great career. Um, the waiting season was really hard for me. And I think for a while I tried to force it and try to force a relationship that was not going to be my forever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's okay. Like I think I learned a lot about myself. I learned about a lot about what I wanted in a relationship, what I needed in a relationship. Um, but I was still just like waiting on the one. And in the back of my head, I knew Braden, now my fiance, that like he was the one. And luckily, like that came to fruition. And that is God's plan for my life. But it was really hard because he was out here having fun and like doing his thing with all his friends. And here I am in Auburn with like very little friends that I'm super close with. And, you know, luckily I like just dug into work for most of that time. But like I see him like going to concerts at the time he lived in Birmingham. And so a lot of his Auburn friends were there and they get to go to concerts and they come down to Auburn for game days and like all this. And luckily I still got to be a part of a lot of game days. But it's just, it was really hard because I wanted it so bad. And you just can't force a relationship ever.
Yeah.
Number one. Whether it's you're in the wrong relationship and you want it to work, or whether you are not in a relationship and you want this person to work, like you can never force it. There's always perfect timing for everything. And I will vouch that until the day that I die, because like genuinely when Braden and I got back together, it wasn't perfect timing because I had just come out of a different relationship. But now I know like it was perfect timing. But it took 3 years. And 3 years of like a ton of personal growth, 3 years of career growth and emotional growth was huge. And I think that like that all happened for a reason, because now that we're back together and engaged, like I'm like, holy crap, like our relationship is so much healthier than it was, but also like we can communicate about hard things, about our emotions, about like what we both need. And that is something that like we didn't have the first time that we dated. And even though the first time we dated, it was great. Like I felt like it was a fairy tale, like it wasn't real almost. And so when we got back together, it was like, okay, I get why we needed that space apart. But it was really stinking hard because I kept telling my mom, I'm like, I know he's the one. And she was like, just be patient, just wait. And that waiting is really hard. Like, you don't want to be patient because you know that you want that now and it would be so great. But there's a reason.
Timing
Timing is everything.
is everything.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you sharing that story, like you weren't the person you needed to be to make the relationship work, and vice versa for him. And so you had to go off and live separate lives to then be able to come back to each other ready.
Yeah.
Right. Like all of your life experience prepares you for this moment. And I think that too, like going back to the conversation about work and stuff, like everything is a lesson. Everything is practice. Every partner that you date and spend time with is teaching you what you want in a relationship versus what you don't want in a relationship. I say that to a lot of my clients that are dating. It's like, okay, it didn't work out. We're just practicing here. Like we're figuring out on the next one we have higher expectations, or we know what our non-negotiables are even more so, right? But I do think it's beautiful. I think the waiting season, again, there's always something, right?
Yeah.
Like Colby and I got married really young, and I never thought that would be my story. I never thought that would be what we did, but we did, and it was great, and it worked out wonderfully. But the waiting season I think of is like when I was trying to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard waiting season, because it's like once you decide you know what you want and you want it, it's like,
why can't it just happen?
Why isn't it just happening?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I've been trying not to make this happen for my entire adult life, and now I want it to happen. Like, what's going on? So I relate to that in that way, but I think that's true for anything, whether it's like a job promotion or you're wanting, you know, to buy a house or anything like that, that you're like really working towards. And it's like, why am I not there? Well, timing. You're not there because you're not ready to be there. There's something else. And if you get so lost in that waiting and wanting period, you miss everything around you.
Yes.
You miss every single thing that you could be learning for to prepare you for that next thing, or that goal that you have is not meant for you.
Right. And I always told myself, like, what's not meant for me will not be. Like, I won't even, like, it'll be okay. I won't ever miss it. And I think too, like right now, my waiting season is like knowing where I'll be once we're married. We've always been long distance, and it's great, and we have like mastered it. But I can't wait to see him every day.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I just have to be patient. And so even like that's a waiting game right now. My job, like
Mm-hmm.
currently I work at an office Monday through Friday. What will that look like in 5 months, 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think there's, like you said, there's so many different things you can be in the waiting season for, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy, adoption. I have a friend going through adoption right now, and like it's crazy
That's
how
a whole
much.
nother thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And honestly, it came a lot quicker than she expected, which is great. But there's just so many different seasons that waiting can happen in. And my advice there would just to be patient. I know it's so hard, but it's one of those things where if it's not meant to be, it won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. And that's kind of like the lookout that I have to have on everything in life. It's like if it's not meant to be, it will be okay.
Yeah.
Like I will keep living and breathing and learning and growing, and that's just something you have to be okay with.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. Um, okay, so Olivia, I want you to do your hype list. Do you know what the hype
Okay.
list is?
No.
Okay. So I named it the Hype Squad because I have this assignment that I give to clients called the Hype List. And essentially, it's like your bragging list, right? To remind yourself that you're a badass and that you can do anything. So it's like a list of achievements and then a list of obstacles that you had to overcome in order to get there. And so I just want you to share one thing, achievement or obstacle or whatever feels right for you that you want to be full of yourself about and brag about and be really proud of.
Yeah. Okay. Let me think. I would say an obstacle, going back to the waiting season, an obstacle I had to overcome was like not settling.
Mm.
Like when I knew something was not right and I knew it wasn't going to end how everyone expects, I had to make a really hard decision. And it was really hard because I worked with the guy that I dated and I still work with him. And it's one of those things where it's like we both had to be very cordial about it because we don't want to create an environment that makes others uncomfortable at work. Um, and so we handled a lot of stuff obviously outside the door privately, but at the end of the day, like I knew it wasn't meant to be,
Yeah.
and I had to make a hard decision for us. And I look back though and I'm like, thank you, Lord, that I did not settle, because like where I'm at now in life is like I feel like light years ahead of where I thought I'd be. And I'm happier, I'm healthier, I'm like more engaged in life. Like I feel like I'm like actually living. I'm not just breathing. Which is so nice. But yeah, I mean like I would tell anyone, don't settle, whether it's for the job, whether it's for the right relationship, whether it's for the house, like anything. Like if you don't have a great gut feeling, don't settle. Like there's a reason why you don't have a great gut feeling. And I think I've always been the person, I wouldn't say I'm a people pleaser, but I like to make sure everyone's happy.
Yeah.
And so, and especially since we worked together, it was so, I felt public. It was public at work.
Yeah.
And it was like, there were humiliating times in that relationship just because if something was wrong, people probably knew at work.
Yeah.
But I just like at this point in life, I know what's right for me and I know what feels good. And so I don't settle. And I don't think I'll ever settle anymore. And I think that's the thing of like, once I know, like, because I didn't settle and it turned out so good, it makes it a little easier to say no to the next wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I love that because, like, I'm the type of person, I have got to have consistency in life of like emotions, schedule, routine, all of that. And emotions is one thing that, like, I have to have consistent in a relationship. And Brayden is so good at like being strong and like being there for me. But I think sometimes too, it's okay to show the weaker side of emotions. And I don't even want to say weak, because showing emotions is not weak to me. It is showing that you're strong, because it can be very hard to show emotions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just continuing to reach for the expectations that you've given yourself and like knowing that is possible, 100% achievable. Like, don't settle. There's no reason to.
I love it.
No reason to.
I think too, like, doing things that scare us is imperative.
Yeah.
Because when you get to the other side of it, you prove to yourself,
Yeah.
I did that shit. Like I did that and I did well and it didn't kill me
Yeah.
and I survived. And you prove to yourself, you build your confidence that you can say no to the next thing that doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
And, trusting your gut, your intuition, it is literally your superpower.
Yeah.
And, I've had clients that I've worked with before, whether it was like in a relationship or in a job, where it was like their body was telling them it wasn't right and their mind was just overpowering it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, we're going to stay here. We're going to do this. We're going to make it work.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to combat that because your body's always telling you when things are wrong,
Yes.
whether it's like the uh-oh feeling or, that goosebumps up your spine, like your spidey sense, so to
Your
speak.
body knows.
And it's really important to get to a place where you can like learn the language of your body. Like, why am I feeling this way? And like go internal and figure it out, because a lot of us are so much on autopilot.
Yes.
That it's like, we think we're just anxious because we're anxious people. No,
There's
something is
something-
wrong that
Yes.
you are not looking around and finding that
Yep.
needs to be changed. And you just keep powering through it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Screw you, body. You don't know what you're talking about.
You're not listening to your body.
And I think there are levels of anxiety that are much more severe than just that. But the average person that says they have anxiety, look around you. Like, what is in your life that is not in alignment? Because that's what it is.
Yep.
And you're ignoring it, medicating it, whatever, suffocating it because you're like, I can overpower this.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, you can for a certain
For a
amount
little
of time,
bit.
but you're going to run yourself into a wall.
Yeah.
Because there's something that's not right for you that's happening. And that takes a long time to figure out. You have to go really internal. You also have to have support around you that even lets you get to that place, but then to look in the mirror and say, this is what it is. I need to fix it.
Yep.
And to actually make changes in your life. Because so many of us, like somebody else in that same situation, may have stayed in that relationship and said, I'm going to make it work because I said I was.
Yeah.
And then gone on to live the next 10 to 15 years, not where they were meant to be. So if anyone hears this, like, do shit that scares you, step out of your box. Like, if it doesn't feel right, it's not.
Yeah. 100%.
Listen to that. Yeah. I mean, I can't say that enough.
When at the time, like, I felt like I was blowing up my life. Like, I felt like I was like saying no to a guy that was going to be great husband, great father, everything. And I felt like because we worked together and because our coworkers had seen this relationship, like they had their own opinions about it. And like honestly, I shouldn't care about the opinions of others, but we're all human. And especially as girls, like that's going to happen.
Yeah. We're lying if we're saying it doesn't bother us. Yeah.
And like I had even told like my family and my friends, like, I'm going to marry this guy. And so for me to finally do something about that feeling of like, there's just something not right. Like I was constantly anxious and I'm not an anxious person. And so for me to finally make the decision of like, I know this is not right. I have to change this. And it was so hard. And like, it was gut wrenching to me because I was like, I have to walk through the office doors tomorrow and like this is our new reality and it's okay. But I had no idea what that meant for my future at the time. And now obviously everything has played out how it's supposed to be, but it's scary to make that decision.
I think about these stories you hear about women or men like walking out on their wedding day, and I'm like, balls of steel. Like I can't even imagine how terrifying that would be. And to be able to come back and like save face and like show up to this and have to like fix all of that. But again, you got to do it for yourself, right? Like it's part of your story.
You have to put yourself first.
And yeah, you could spend your whole life worried about what other people think of you. And a lot of us do, but then you don't do anything for yourself.
And you're not
and
happy.
I can promise you, they don't care as much as you think they do, if at all.
100%.
They are more worried about themselves, right? So it's, oh my gosh, I feel like I could get on a soapbox about that. Thank you for coming and doing this,
Thanks
Olivia.
for having me.
Was this your first podcast?
Yeah.
Ooh,
and I loved it.
Thank you for coming. Come anytime you want. We can talk about wedding planning next time. Maybe that would be a fun one.
Yes.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for getting hyped with us today, and be kind to yourself.